So I'm here to talk to you today about invention, a subject I'm very, very passionate about. But before I do that, I'm going to talk about another subject I'm passionate about, and that's family. That's my little brother, Glenn. I'm very privileged to be standing here in front of you today. Glenn stood on this stage 2 years ago and gave a talk of his own, a very wonderful talk about the conditions for creativity and how he and I grew up in Newcastle in the north of England with diversity, adversity, and advocacy on our sides. It's on YouTube if you want to watch it. It has literally tens of views. Sorry, brother. And Glenn and I have had very rewarding, fulfilling careers in the creative industries as creative directors in creative agencies. We've used our creativity and our ideas to develop brands and businesses across a range of industries across the world. And I've been doing that for 25 years. And a few years ago, I got slightly frustrated that I wasn't using my ideas for their full potential. I felt I wanted to give them a greater purpose, and also that I wanted my ideas to change the world, not just change the world of the clients and the businesses that I worked for. So I quit my job and I became an inventor. And I love saying I'm an inventor. It's a wonderful thing to say. However, when you tell people you're an inventor, they make certain associations. They can think you're a bit of a crackpot. This is my real hero. This is my real inspiration for being an inventor. I'm sure you all know Elon Musk. We know him as an inventor through his inventions. Electric cars, reusable rockets, solar roof panels, the Hyperloop. And I'm always very keen to say that I'm an inventor. I'm not an entrepreneur. We know these type of guys for their wealth, their money, their business interests. The real difference for me is that for an inventor, better way beats better off. And I fundamentally believe that the world needs solutions to real problems, not more millionaires. This is one of my other invention heroes, a guy called Richard Buckminster Fuller. He was one of the great American inventors of the 20th century. Bucky, as he's known, wrote in his final book, Critical Path, that the human race, to create sustainability for ourselves, needed to invent in 4 specific areas, or be inventive in those areas. The first is health. We need to keep life alive. Energy, because if it runs out, we run out. Environment, because if we destroy that, it's self-destruct. And finally, interstellar space travel, because if we do mess up the first 3, we're going to need something to get us out of here. And so I decided to devote my life to inventing in those specific areas. And having made that decision, I realized I don't really know an awful lot about those areas, and I don't actually know an awful lot about inventing and developing products to bringing them to life in those areas. So I thought, I'm going to need some education here. And I did a little bit of research, found out what was available to me. And what I did find was that if you want to be an entrepreneur, there are over 10,000 MBA courses available globally, if you're interested in better off. My search revealed one course in invention. It took 5 days, and it was discontinued 2 years ago, which shows you how hard it must be to teach invention. So being an inventor, I just invented my own MBA. And I went and gathered all the information I could from the greatest thinkers around the world, the most innovative, most forward-thinking thinkers of the modern age and of the past. And I filled my brain with everything I thought I required to be an inventor. Everything from innovation, disruption theory, systems theory, psychology, economics, physics, engineering, technology, neuropsychology. I really went to town absorbing everything I could that I thought I required to be an inventor. This is a little diagram I've done of my rather limited little Geordie brain. As you can see, it's quite full now. There isn't really room for an awful lot more. If I need new information, I kind of have to delete things like childhood memories. But having developed all that, or taken all that information in and all that understanding, I'm now prepared to connect things together in different ways to have new ideas and to invent. So you're all asking, so what did I invent? Well, you've probably by now all noticed the prominent bulge in my pocket. It's my inhaler. So this thing, I've had asthma since I was a child, as has my brother, as have many members of my family. And this is a wonderful little invention. I'm sure many of you have used them and have them. If I have an asthma attack, this could save my life. But the downside of that is that it's a rather cumbersome thing, and it contains 200 doses of a drug that I only ever really need 1 dose of. And so I've always wanted something smaller, simpler, more convenient to carry. And when people do have asthma attacks and they suffer from asthma attacks, the great problem is not having these on hand, and people don't carry them for reasons like the stigma attached to carrying medical devices. So I've always wanted something simpler, and a while ago I went for a new prescription, and the pharmacist said to me, well, I've got some good news. We've got a new inhaler in. It's a new generation, and would you like to try it? And I thought, great, it's going to be much simpler and smaller and more interesting. And he gave me this thing. It's bigger. It contains fewer doses, and actually it's rather complex to use. You need a degree in engineering to understand it. But it is a great piece of technology, and the main difference between this device and this device is that the drug inside of here contains a wet mist. It's a liquid solution. The drug inside here has been milled and spray dried as fine particles, a powder, effectively. I'm sure won't be any use to those of you at the back, but you can probably see a tiny amount of white powder on my hands there. And knowing that the drug was available as a dry powder gave me an idea, my first invention. And I thought, well, if I can put that tiny amount of dry powder in a very small device, I can create the kind of convenient inhaler that I've always craved, I've always wanted. So I took a business card size substrate or surface, I put 2 of them together, and I invented this thing. I call it the one-haler. It's an inhaler, and it has 1 dose. I think that's quite clever. But then I worked in marketing for years. Thank you. And it's incredibly simple. It's 2 cards sealed together at the side, and inside there is a membrane, a breathable membrane, and on that tiny little membrane sits a tiny little dose of the dry powder. And all you do is you squeeze it, it forms a tunnel, you breathe, and your breath lifts the powder off the membrane, and it goes naturally into your lungs. It goes better into your lungs because it follows your breath. And I sketched it out, and I thought, I've invented this, and it's brilliant, that's amazing, I'm an inventor. And I thought, I really don't know much about how you take respiratory inhalers to market. So I had to go back to education again and learn an awful lot more. And me not being particularly shy, I jumped on a plane to Istanbul and went to the world's largest conference of dry powder pharmacologists. And I turned up and I said, hey, I invented an inhaler. And I'm like, great, come in, let's help you with that. And I spent a week with these guys learning about how they develop these dry powders and how they manufacture them. But what was amazing was that I realized that it wasn't just the dry powder I was interested in that was being developed, that there are a multitude of drugs being taken from the form that you're probably used to take them in as pills or potentially injections, and being developed as respirable powders. I get asthma when I do exercise. Salbutamol is available, and that's what's in the inhaler in my pocket. But I found that other drugs, sumatriptan for migraine, were being developed as dry powders. The measles vaccine, the polio vaccine, oxytocin, which prevents postpartum hemorrhage in childbirth. Even Viagra was being developed as a dry powder for the relief of men and women. But it became apparent to me that the potential for this little device, this simple little idea I had, was huge. And that gave me greater impetus and urgency to really take it forward and make it work, to bring it to life. So having looked at the pharmacology, the chemistry, I then realized I needed to know about respiratory physics. So I made another pilgrimage to another city. I went to Cambridge. Cambridge is a center of excellence for respiratory physics. And I sought out this man. He's one of the world's leading respiratory physicists and inhaler designers. And I thought, well, if you're going to know whether your inhaler will work, ask the guy who has made many work before. So I took it to David Harris, and he was very welcoming, lovely guy, taught me everything I needed to know about Bernoulli's principle and differential pressures, but I kind of get it, and I understood more about how to bring this thing to life. I then moved from chemistry and physics to biology, and as luck would have it, it turns out the entire respiratory medical industry comes to my city, Edinburgh, once a year for their conference. So, not being shy, I booked a ticket, turned up, waded in, networked, showed everybody what I was working on, and I was very welcomed. And I learned an awful lot more than just the biology of the lungs. I learned about manufacturing, about materials, and I networked with all the people who could give me the expertise that I'd need to bring this thing to life. But the one thing that I mentioned earlier, I'm an inventor, I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm not particularly commercial. So I had to then work out if I was going to bring this to life, it has to become a bit more businessy. I have to be kind of conscious of the need to be commercial. So at that point, I brought in my business partner, Lisa, who is a far sharper commercial brain than mine. And together we developed a business plan. I've never written a business plan before. It's hard work. And also we developed a financial model, and we patented our invention because if you don't patent it, you don't protect your IP, then someone else can steal that, and I didn't want that to happen. So I ended up sitting through, you can see an image there, I read 864 patent documents for other inhalers to make sure that I wasn't infringing on anybody else's intellectual property in developing mine. Thank goodness I wasn't, and our patent is now pending. And we took our business plan and our patent, and we went to Scotland's economic body for growth and development, Scottish Enterprise, and they liked what we were doing as well. And so they've helped us with grant funding to go back to the industry that I networked in and learned from, and bring some of those experts in to help me on the journey of developing the inhaler. And it's becoming very real. This year, I'll be getting back my first clinical data around the efficiency of the product. We're building a multitude of prototypes, and we're already talking to the pharma industry about how we can take this thing into the world. And every day, it gets closer and closer to becoming real. And from that little idea that I had, I'm starting to genuinely believe that I'll be able to help people around the world and help them to deliver those drugs that they desperately need, especially in remote places where a flat pack inhaler is so much more distributable than the kind of drugs that we distribute at the moment. And it's really humbling. That little idea that I had is actually becoming real. It's actually going to do something. And I've skirted over the hard work that's gone into doing this, but it really is hard work. I'm quite exhausted. I work all the time. I'm always broke. It's not cheap doing this. But I'm happier than I've ever been. I'm using my ideas to change the world. And I'm an inventor. I love saying that. And I'm going to leave you with one last learning, the real valuable lesson that I've learned throughout this journey. And that is that it's not about the idea. The real value is in the effort and the hard work that you put in to bring your ideas to life. If you have an idea, go and be an inventor. Thank you very much.